I never thought something so simple could turn into a full-blown nightmare. It was just another hot summer day and all I wanted to do was cool off in the pool. My pool. The one I paid for, maintained, and had every right to use. But apparently that wasn't enough for some people. It all started when I grabbed my towel, put on my sunglasses and made my way to the pool. The sun was blazing, the air was thick with heat, and I could already picture myself slipping into the cool, refreshing water. It was one of those days when the only thing that made sense was to float around and forget about the world. But the world didn't want to be forgotten. As I stepped onto the pool deck, I noticed someone staring at me. A woman. Arms crossed, lips pursed, radiating that kind of energy that instantly puts you on edge. You know the type. The one who takes neighborhood rules way too seriously. The one who acts like she owns the whole block. I had seen her around before, always patrolling the area like some self-appointed guardian. But I never thought she'd be a problem. I tried to ignore it. Maybe she was just having a bad day. Maybe she wasn't even looking at me. But the moment I lowered myself into the water, I heard the sharp clack of heels against concrete. Fast. Purposeful. Coming straight toward me. "Excuse me," she snapped. Her voice was sharp, like she had been waiting for this moment all her life. "Do you live here?" I blinked up at her, water dripping from my face. Yeah." She narrowed her eyes. "Which unit?" That's when I realized she wasn't just asking. She was testing me. I told her my address. Plain and simple. No hesitation. No reason for any. But the second the words left my mouth, her face twisted into something ugly. "That's not part of the HOA, she said like she had caught me in a lie. I just stared at her, not sure what to say. Because yeah, she was right. My house wasn't part of the HOA. And that's because I never signed up for it. Never wanted to. Never needed to. The pool? It wasn't an HOA amenity. It was for residents of the neighborhood, HOA or not. And I was very much a resident. But she wasn't having it. "This pool is for HOA members only," she said, folding her arms like that settled it. "If you don't pay into the HOA, you can't use it." Now, at this point I could have explained. I could have pulled up the documents that clearly stated I had every right to be there. But the way she was looking at me, like I was some intruder in my own neighborhood, it set something off inside me. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I think there's a misunderstanding. This pool isn't owned by the HOA. It's open to all residents." Her nostrils flared. "That's not true. And even if it was, I'm the HOA president. I have the authority to enforce the rules." So that's what this was about. Power. Control. The need to make sure everyone around her knew she was in charge. I could feel my heart pounding. Not from fear. No, this was something else. Frustration. That helpless, infuriating feeling you get when you know you're in the right, but someone refuses to listen. Other people around the pool had started to notice. A couple sitting under an umbrella, a guy drying off by the lounge chairs, even a few kids splashing in the shallow end. They weren't saying anything, but I could feel their eyes on us. I swallowed down my irritation and tried again. "I live here," I repeated, slower this time. "This is my neighborhood. This is my pool." She didn't like that. Her face darkened and she pulled out her phone. "If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops." And that's when it hit me, she wasn't just being difficult. She was actually willing to take this to the next level. Over what? A pool? I felt my fingers tighten around the pool ladder. The rational part of me said to just walk away, let it go, deal with it later. But another part of me, the part that had spent years dealing with people like her, people who thought they could bully their way into controlling everything, refused to back down. I exhaled slowly, choosing my words carefully. "Go ahead." Her eyebrows shot up. "Call them," I said, my voice steady. "I'd love to see what they say." For a second, just a second, I saw doubt flicker across her face. She hadn't expected that. She had expected me to cave, to mumble an apology and slink away. But I wasn't going anywhere. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin and tapped the screen. And just like that, everything changed. The air around me felt thick, charged with tension. I watched as she lifted her phone to her ear, her lips pressing into a thin, self-satisfied line. She really thought she had won. That was the part that got to me the most. Not just the arrogance, but the absolute confidence that she had the power to make me leave. I could hear her talking to the dispatcher, her voice sharp, clipped, full of exaggerated concern. "Yes, I need officers at the community pool immediately," she said, glancing at me like I was some kind of criminal. "There's a trespasser refusing to leave." Trespasser. That word hit me like a punch to the chest. I wasn't some stranger sneaking into a private club. I wasn't climbing over fences or picking locks. I was standing in my own neighborhood next to the pool I had every right to use. And yet, in her mind, I didn't belong here. A few people around the pool started shifting uncomfortably. Some looked away, pretending they weren't listening, while others watched with open curiosity. I could feel their judgment, their silent questions hanging in the air. Who was right? Who was wrong? But no one spoke up. She ended the call with a triumphant little nod and slipped her phone back into her pocket. "They're on their way," she said, folding her arms across her chest. "I suggest you gather your things and leave before it gets worse for you." I stared at her, my blood simmering. "Worse for me?" I echoed, letting out a small, humorless laugh. "You just called the cops on a homeowner for using their own pool. You think that's going to end well for you?" She didn't answer. She just smirked. And that's when I realized she didn't care. It wasn't about the rules. It wasn't even about the HOA. This was about control. About making sure I knew my place, or at least the place she thought I should be in. She wanted to see me back down, to feel small, to feel powerless. But that wasn't going to happen. So I didn't move. I didn't gather my things. I didn't apologize or make excuses. I just stood there, arms crossed, matching her energy with a calmness I didn't entirely feel. Minutes passed. The sun beat down on us. A little boy's laughter echoed across the pool as he splashed in the water, completely oblivious to the tension in the air. Then the sound of sirens. I turned my head just in time to see a patrol car roll into the parking lot. The flashing lights reflected off the water, casting ripples of red and blue across the surface. 2 officers stepped out, adjusting their belts, scanning the scene. She waved them over like she had just summoned backup in a war. "Officers. Over here." I exhaled through my nose, steadying myself. This was it. The officers approached, their faces neutral but alert. One of them, a middle-aged man with a buzz cut, spoke first. "What seems to be the problem?" She wasted no time. "This person is trespassing," she said, jabbing a finger in my direction. "They don't belong to this HOA, and they're refusing to leave the premises." The officer turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Sir, do you live here?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I own a house in this neighborhood." The officer nodded, taking in my calm stance, my lack of panic. "What's your address?" I gave it to him, watching as he scribbled it down in his notepad. The second officer, a younger woman, tilted her head slightly. "Are you a member of the HOA?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "And I don't have to be." The older officer glanced at the woman beside him, then turned back to the HOA president. "Ma'am, is this property under HOA management?" She hesitated for half a second. Just long enough for me to catch it. But then she straightened her spine, lifting her chin. "This is an HOA community." "That's not what I asked," the officer said, his tone shifting ever so slightly. "Does his specific property fall under HOA jurisdiction?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. And there it was. I saw it happen in real time, the moment she realized she had backed herself into a corner. The moment she understood that the officers weren't going to just take her word for it. "I mean," she stammered, trying to recover, "technically his house isn't part of the HOA, but this pool is meant for HOA members." "That's not how that works," the officer interrupted, his voice firm. Her face darkened. "But if the pool is community property and not HOA controlled, he has every right to be here," he continued, shutting her down completely. Calling the police over this was unnecessary. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Because in that moment she realized she had lost. The younger officer sighed and tucked her notepad away. "Sir, we're sorry for the inconvenience. You're not in any trouble." I nodded, my heart still pounding in my chest. "I figured." The older officer turned back to the HOA president, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, if you have an issue with property rules, that's something to take up with the community board, not law enforcement. Do not call 911 for personal disputes like this again." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She wasn't used to being challenged. I stood there, watching as the realization set in for her. She had wanted to make an example out of me. Instead, she had embarrassed herself in front of the entire neighborhood. And as the officers walked back to their patrol car, I did something I knew would infuriate her more than anything else. I grabbed my towel, turned around, and stepped back into the pool. The water felt different this time. Cooler. Calmer. Not just because of the temperature but because I had won. Not through shouting. Not through aggression. Just by standing my ground and letting the facts speak for themselves. But even as I floated there, feeling the tension finally start to melt away, I knew this wasn't over. Not for her. The HOA president stood stiffly by the poolside, arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was holding herself together. Her face was flushed, not from the heat but from sheer humiliation. She had called the police, expecting them to throw me out, expecting to show the entire neighborhood that her word was law. But now she was the one left standing there, exposed. Powerless. I could feel her eyes boring into me, waiting for me to gloat, to say something smug, to give her a reason to lash out again. But I didn't. I just leaned back, let my body float and closed my eyes against the sun. Because nothing would get under her skin more than my absolute indifference. A few hushed murmurs floated through the air. The people who had been watching, the couple by the umbrella, the man drying off near the lounge chairs, even the kids who had stopped splashing to stare, were now exchanging glances. They had seen everything. They had heard everything. And no one was on her side. She must have felt it too. The way the air had shifted, the way her authority had cracked right in front of them. Without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed off, her heels clicking against the pavement, her back ramrod straight. It should have ended there. But it didn't. I stayed in the pool for a while longer, letting the water wash away the last bits of irritation. The sun had started to dip lower, casting a golden glow over everything. I was finally starting to feel at peace again. But then movement near the entrance caught my eye. There she was, talking to someone. Not just anyone, one of the security guards for the community. A younger guy, probably in his late 20s, dressed in the standard uniform. He looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot as she spoke in rapid, sharp tones, her hands moving wildly. I sighed. Of course. If the police wouldn't help her, she'd try another route. The security guard finally nodded hesitantly, glancing toward the pool, toward me. His expression was wary, like he already knew he was being dragged into something messy. I could almost see the internal debate happening in his head. But then, with a small breath, he squared his shoulders and started walking toward me. I stayed where I was, my fingers skimming the surface of the water as he approached. "Hey, sir," he said, stopping at the edge of the pool. His voice was polite but cautious. "Mind if we talk for a second?" I met his gaze. "Sure. What's up?" He cleared his throat. "I was just informed that, you might not be a member of the HOA?" I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. "Let me guess, she told you to come over here?" He hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Yeah. She said the pool is for HOA members only." I tilted my head. "And do you believe that?" He opened his mouth, then shut it. His eyes darted toward where the HOA president was standing near the entrance, watching like a hawk. I could see the discomfort in his face. He didn't want to be doing this. I have to check," he said finally. "Can you confirm if you live here?" I took a deep breath, nodding. "Yeah, I do. Address." I gave it to him. He pulled out a small notepad, scribbled it down, then sighed. "Okay," he said, glancing at the HOA president. "And you're not part of the HOA?" "Nope," I said, popping the P for emphasis. "And I don't have to be. The pool isn't HOA controlled. It's for residents." The security guard hesitated again, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what I thought." I raised an eyebrow. "Then why are we having this conversation?" He exhaled sharply, glancing back toward the HOA president. "Because she insisted. And technically I have to check complaints." I leaned against the pool's edge, crossing my arms. "So now that you've checked, what's your call?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned and looked at her. She was standing there, waiting, expecting him to back her up. But I could see the shift happening. He wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what was going on. After a moment, he turned back to me and gave a small nod. "You're good," he said simply. I smirked. "Thought so." His lips twitched like he wanted to smile, but he kept it professional. With one last glance at the HOA president, he turned and walked back toward the entrance. I watched as he spoke to her, his posture relaxed but firm. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I didn't need to. Her reaction told me everything. Her mouth fell open, then snapped shut, then opened again. Her hands curled into fists at her sides, her face twisting in pure frustration. She shook her head, gesturing wildly, but the security guard just stood there, unmoving. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she threw her hands up in exasperation and stormed off, disappearing through the gate. I let out a slow breath, leaning my head back against the pool's edge. She had lost. Again. And this time, everyone had seen it. The sun had started dipping below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the water. The pool was quieter now. A few people still lounged in chairs and some kids played at the shallow end, but the energy had shifted. It was as if everyone had silently agreed that they had just witnessed something ridiculous. Something they'd probably talk about for weeks. I pulled myself up onto the pool deck, grabbing my towel. The air was thick with chlorine and the distant scent of someone grilling nearby. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even annoyed. If anything, I felt a strange kind of satisfaction. But as I dried off, I caught movement near the gate. She was back. Not marching in like before, not dragging security or calling for backup. Just standing there, hands on her hips, watching me. For a second, I thought she might actually leave it alone. Maybe she had finally accepted that she had lost. But then she took a step forward. I exhaled, shaking my head. You've got to be kidding me. She stopped a few feet away, her expression unreadable. There was something different this time. No smugness. No fake authority. Just frustration. Enjoying yourself? She asked, her voice tight. I raised an eyebrow. I was. She crossed her arms. You think you won something? I let out a short laugh. I don't have to think anything. I live here. You called the cops on me for using my own pool. How do you think that looks? Her jaw clenched. I was enforcing the rules. No, I said evenly. You were enforcing your rules. Big difference. She huffed, shifting her weight. You don't understand. This community isn't run by you, I cut in. Not my house. Not this pool. You wanted control and you didn't get it. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Her eyes flashed with something, anger maybe, but also something deeper. I built this community, she snapped. I've been running things here for years. I keep everything in order. And people respect that. I tilted my head. Do they? Because I didn't see a single person back you up today. That hit. I could tell by the way her posture stiffened, by the way she looked away for a brief second. She didn't say anything. I let out a slow breath. Look, I get it. You're used to being in charge. You like having authority. But you can't just make up rules and expect people to follow them. That's not how any of this works. She shook her head. You don't get it. If we let people like you. I took a step closer. People like me? She hesitated, realizing what she had just said. I meant people who don't follow the structure. I stared at her. You mean homeowners who don't answer to you? Silence. For the first time, she looked unsure of herself. I let out a small, humorless laugh. You know, for someone so obsessed with rules, you really don't seem to know them that well. You had security check on me. You had the police check on me. What more do you want? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I just want what's best for this neighborhood. I gestured around. And what part of this mess was best for the neighborhood? You wasted everyone's time. You made yourself look bad. You harassed a homeowner just because you don't like not being in control. She didn't answer. I sighed, shaking my head. I'm done here. Turning away, I grabbed my bag and started walking toward the exit. I expected her to say something, to throw one last insult, one last desperate attempt to regain control. But she didn't. Instead, she just stood there watching me leave. And for the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, she realized she had finally gone too far. Thanks for listening. For more, subscribe and like the video.